She admitted to cheating on me, and I tried to killing myself. I tried to kill myself rather, in a really dumb way, and I was in like a mental hospital for a while, and then I like developed like a cutting habit and stuff. But I'm like over all that now. And then after that, I met a girl in real life, and I met more than a couple girls in real life, and I'm not really a virgin anymore. I would prefer to be, because I do still have like I do feel like that I made a mistake losing my virginity.
This is a really intense question, I guess. Do you have like strong positions on like incel uprisings?
Most people know me as like the incel guy from Jubilee, right?
If you could summarize your opinion towards women?
I do think they are very important, but
before I was on the incel thing with Jubilee, I was primarily known for being on Jesse Lee Peterson's show on and off. I had like an episode on like the Fallen State or whatever, you know, the amazing that guy. After our last, I guess it was, I don't know even what to call it. It wasn't really a debate. It was just kind of like, I mean, I felt like the Nazi dude was kind of just like going off the entire time.
Yeah, he kind of got the ire of the crowd, I would say, for sure, yeah.
They came from some European country. What do you mean?
My family was part of the settlers who founded this nation.
So they came from somewhere else.
Do you understand how nations work?
Sure.
Okay, so if someone comes here and starts a new nation, does that mean they're still part of the old nation?
I mean, it depends on what the
No,
laws
and then
of the
if those
nations
people
are.
have babies for hundreds of years and I'm a byproduct of those, is this now my nation?
So what about the Italians that are here? Do they not count as Americans? What about the
explain-
Irish people that are here? Do
Let
they
me
not count as
explain why
Americans?
the skin color matters.
That was weird. When all this stuff happened with all the Jubilee stuff, that was like early 2019.
Okay. Yeah, and then how old are you now?
Right now I'm 24. I'm gonna be 25.
Okay, gotcha.
Soonish.
Okay, cool.
but,
All right,
yeah.
just checking. All right.
Because after several months, I've like, you know, I lost like a lot of weight. You know, I self-improved to the point where like I was getting indications of interest. Like there was girls who were calling me cute in real life that I was kind of like, you know. You know, I seemed to be doing well for myself to a degree. I wasn't really interested in a relationship with anyone from LA because I didn't really, I don't really like the type of culture that's here. So someone contacts me on the forum pretending to be an incel, and
A girl, right?
a girl.
Wait, did she
yeah,
pretend to be a
and,
male incel, or did she pretend to be a...
She pretends to be a male incel because like there's no females allowed.
Yeah,
on the
okay.
forum, right?
Okay, go ahead.
Right. She was pretending to be a male incel, and she contacted me, and she was like, "There's no way you can be an incel because I know this girl who likes you or whatever, blah 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 blah. And here's her Discord, and you know you should go bully her or whatever." And I was like, "This is kind of a weird message." But I'll go check it out and see like you know what's going on with that, right? And so I go check and I talk to her, and I kind of had a feeling. I mean, that was kind of obvious that.
Like it comes across as like almost like a high school messaging. Yeah, of course, this is like a bait. Like they're trying to get you to talk to somebody. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to this person and I find out, you know, it was the person who wrote me the message on the website was the same female who wanted to talk to me or whatever. And so it turns out this girl, now I didn't know this until like a few days into talking to her, but it turns out like this girl is like the most popular like e-girl on like R9K and 4chan or whatever.
Okay.
I'm not gonna name any names or anything, but like all the drama is kind of out there. And so like we kind of enter
When
into
you hold on, I'm sorry, because it's been a long
yeah.
time since I've done 4chan stuff. When you say popular girl on R9K, so I don't know what the okay, I don't know what the proper term is to use, but like a tripped F, you know what I'm talking about, right? That word, right? Like a tripped frog? Is this like somebody that trips all the time, or do people do that all the time on R9K, or how do you know who's who? Or do they just like post pictures of themselves, or what?
So R9K has a pretty bad culture, like a really, I would say like especially like in 2019, 2020, they have a really bad culture where they would find girls that they would find cute or just like you know, a YouTube video, or maybe they interact with 4chan in some way.
Yeah.
And they will like obsess over them in a very extreme way, sometimes to the point of it getting to like illegal levels, right? Like involving like stalking and all kinds of stuff. And like we call them orbiters, right? And that kind of stuff is very bad, very bad. But she was kind of like the most popular girl on 4chan or on R9K in particularly. We enter a relationship after, you know, we find out like we have a lot more in common. She was from Australia. I was from
big red flag.
You know, America.
I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, no. It was a long distance relationship,
Sure.
right? And then and that's already like just rough, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, and then you know, things go by, and I find out that her parents are very abusive to her, and even though like she's like 18, like she's still getting spanked, she's getting yelled at.
Wait, she's how old?
I'm hearing this. She's 18 and
she's getting spanked. Jeez.
She's getting spanked.
Okay.
I'm hearing her parents yell at her. I'm hearing all kinds of just like insane shit. Like whenever I'm talking to her, all the time, and it's just like it's fucking horrendous, right?
Okay.
Me along with her counselor, because she has like a counselor. She tells her counselor that she's getting abused and she wants to leave her parents' home. Right, and this is before like the lockdowns happen in Australia and all that kind of stuff, right? So I help her with that along with her counselor who gets her like a home and blah 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 blah. Like this is like a government counselor, right?
Okay.
When the lockdowns happen, like she already had her passport and she was planning to like come over here, and we were planning to get married and all that kind of stuff, and but when all the lockdowns happened, she was kind of like stuck there because the lockdowns in Australia at the time were probably like more strict than even like
anywhere in the world almost. Yeah, it was really intense.
Yeah. She was stuck there pretty much entirely, and I am glazing over a lot of like good and like glazing over a lot of bad as well. And I'm not, yeah, but so it turns out she there was another guy involved. She was talking about being touch starved a lot, and eventually, long story short, a lot of the orbiters from R9K are involved in our relationship. She's posting a lot of stuff of our private messages online. I have gotten doxxed multiple times at this point, and I know I'm really going hard now. But there was someone who came to my house. I don't know if I should be talking about that, but there was someone who came to my house who was in my backyard. I had to call the police on them as well. She was just getting fucking really crazy, and then she was threatening suicide all the time, and and it was just kind of like this is getting really really bad, and this is but I was in love with her, I was genuinely in love with her, even though we were like forced into a long distance relationship or whatever. But eventually I guess it all like went way too fucking far, and she left me, and then she admitted to cheating on me, and I tried to killing myself. I tried to kill myself rather, in a really dumb way, and I was in like a mental hospital for a while, and then I like developed like a cutting habit and stuff. But I'm like over all that now. And then after that, I met a girl in real life, and I met more than a couple girls in real life, and I'm not really a virgin anymore. I would prefer to be, because I do still have like a Christian faith, and I know like a lot of people are not Christian in the chat, but it's like I do feel like that I made a mistake losing my virginity.
Your kind of like thing online is, I imagine there's like a decent chunk of people that know you as the incel guy. Like, oh, that's the incel guy from like Jubilee. Is this like a badge you want to wear, or is this something you try to get away from, or are you kind of indifferent to it now, or what?
I mean, yeah. So a lot of people do know me as the Jubilee Incel guy, like even on the forum, even on my YouTube channel, even most people who contact me, because I have like public contact information out there. I don't really like hide that. Like I have like my email up, my Twitter. You can find me on Looksmax as well. But I mean, it's not really a public place, but I mean, it's public to view. But so a lot of people who do go out and find me and try and contact me, whether it be like my email or my Discord or whatever, they know me as the Jubilee Incel guy, right? Yeah. Now, a lot of the time, they'll see one of my videos, or they'll see like one of my recent pictures, especially because this is kind of surprising, right? But most people who contact me are women. Most people who contact me are women, and a lot of them are kind of like surprised when they see that I look different from the video, I guess. And yeah, I mean, I just try to have like discussions with them about whatever they want to talk about. If anyone wants to contact me about anything, I'll talk to anyone about whatever, right? If I have the free time. Now, of course, I will be like pretty blunt and honest with them about whatever they ask me about, whether it be like anything related to incel topics or whatever. But some people are, like that. Some people find my views very disgusting, right? Some people find my views to be horrendous, absolutely, just dreadful.
Yeah.
And that's, I understand. My views are, I guess, they are pretty extreme. I'm very self-aware about that. But well, I mean, extreme in like by today's standards, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not trying to like run away from the incel or from the Jubilee stuff. I do let people know that the videos were edited, but that's about it.
Do you when you talk to people on you describe the other platform you talk on that it sounds like a little bit more extreme? Did you say what was this called? Looksmart or Looksmax or what?
Oh, it's called Looksmax. I can send you like the link. It's called looksmax.org or whatever. It's supposed to be a men's self-improvement forum. Okay. Right? It's it's a little bit more than that. I mean, you go to the off-topic section, you might see some. I wouldn't like show any of it on stream or anything. I mean, just be careful about it if you do at least. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm like, I even posted a thread on there, and like recently, about going on the stream. Someone else posted a thread about that as well. All of this stuff on Looksmax, it's basically just like a place where guys can talk to each other in like a private. There's not really any rules other than don't post anything illegal, don't dox anyone, don't do anything that is, genuinely bad. But like, other than that, it's pretty like much rule free.
Gotcha. Do you, when you engage in like content there, are you like normally just like debating people over like what are like the big topics, I guess, that you guys are like usually discussing?
That's a good question. So like normally what we talk about, I noticed like recently as well, I would say like the biggest, can I talk about this? So the biggest thing that we debate on there nowadays, I've noticed has to do with kind of like the sexual market differences between the races, I suppose. Sure. So I don't know if like basically how like certain races are more high value in certain dating markets compared to other races. It basically like how maybe like they talk like there's like these concepts in the Looksmax and I guess incel community of like just be a certain race and you will have you're not going to be an incel. You're going to have women who are attracted to you or whatever. And I find that I'll debate that quite a lot because there's almost two sides to this. There are people who say just be white. And they say that if you are white, then you're going to have a bunch of women who will always be attracted to you or whatever. And there are people who say just be black or just be ethnic. And then you'll have like certain white women who are attracted to ethnic men because of their increased status in like maybe more liberal areas, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would say I'm partly more on the just be I debate far more for like the just be ethnic or just be black side of things, mostly because people get really mad about me debating that kind of stuff. But and that's something that I get a big rise out of as well, is kind of like people getting angry or mad and just it's doing a little bit of trolling,
Wait, do you have do you have any strong positions or feelings staked out in that area then, or do you mainly just troll to kind of like fuck with people or like debate to like fuck with people?
Right. I mean, I would say I probably would say I do believe that ethnic men, people of color. I'm trying to use the right words here. You know, they probably do have a bit more of an inflated status in the sexual market among maybe like certain white women than a white man who is maybe like average or below average. So like a below average ethnic man in like looks wise in the West is going to have an inflated status in the sexual market than a average or below average white male, I would say.
I think there are some stereotypes that are kind of that can be a little descriptive. So like if you've ever gone on like Hapa forums, you have like Asian men will complain a lot about not having access to white women or Asian women, and Asian women are like fetishized by a lot of white men.
I
do think that some of these stereotypes are probably a little bit like, you have to be a little bit more specific about like, you know, classes that are involved. So like, I don't know, for instance, if black men or other like men of color or whatever are necessarily valued the same throughout like all of the income classes or your socioeconomic status. It probably will depend a lot on like it probably varies from area to area, I imagine. But yeah, there's a lot of like interesting stuff. I guess in terms of like who does better in which places. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing as well. Like sexual markets, they vary a lot. Like you know, the way that women are attracted to men and like how and why and where in the world, it's going to depend. It's going to depend very much so on like the culture. It's going to very much depend on like how people are inflated in the culture. You know, whether it be like certain groups of people, maybe inflated to a higher level than others. Like for example, in the like Asian sexual markets, there's a reason why people like a lot of Asian incels, for example, will say something like, you know, if you're white, or Hapas, for example, if you're white, then you can go to Asia and well, you know, Asian women will be all over you. I mean, that's not really true. You can't just go to Japan and there's just going to be thousands of Japanese women who just like surround you and, you know, they're ready to you know, join your harem.
Not quite, but like as somebody that's been in multiple Asian countries and then on Tinder, it is, being a white person there is pretty insane. Like it actually is like really crazy.
It is.
So here's kind of a question, because this is always kind of like the, I guess this is always the thing that I get the most hung up on when it comes to these types of conversations. So I think that it's obviously true that there are, for whatever reason, like different people have different preferences for different types of people in different areas. Like it's varied, but like these things definitely exist. Sometimes I get worried when I listen to people have these conversations, though, that they get very, I guess you could say like doomerpilled on things, or maybe you could even say like blackpilled, right? Where they like kind of like lose all hope. And I notice especially when it comes to like MRA stuff, or when it comes to maybe even incel stuff, although I don't go down those roads as much. Like it seems like there's always like these two paths between like people that are like, okay, well, you know, life sucks, we need to do everything we can to make things better. And then the other road that's like, life sucks and it's never going to get better and fuck everything and it's all fucked. Do you like identify strongly with either of those camps, or like which do you push people towards? Or
So there really, you are completely right about that. There really are like two camps, particularly in like the incel sphere, or like the manosphere, or even like the right wing extreme side of things, right? Like unfortunately, there's like a lot of, you know, there's a lot of crossover between those as well. So there really are the people who are very nihilistic. They see all the black-pilled truths, as they would say, and they would find it to be just they go down a road of nihilism. They go down a road of hedonism or giving up, and they're like, you know, we have to do nothing. We just have to live for ourselves because it's over. It's, you know, they'll say like, it's over, man, and there's nothing that we can do. It's just over. And they'll encourage people to just give up, just be a hedonist, just do drugs, look smacks only for pumping and dumping women, don't get a fucking relationship, don't do anything, right? And then there's the people who are like, it's pretty bleak, it's pretty bad, but with enough effort, you can succeed. You can, self-improve to the point where you look better, you financially improve. And now it may be a lot harder than it was in the past, but you can do it. You can get enough money. You can get good looking enough. You can rise up and do something with your life and succeed. And I'm more on that camp. I believe that you can rise up. Because I mean, I've lost over 200 pounds. I have financially lost a lot of money and then gained twice as much money back. So it's kind of like you can do the right thing and succeed. It's gonna take a long time. It's gonna take years for many people, but I encourage everyone that, you know, the black pill is not nihilism. The black pill is just dark truths. And just because you see a dark truth doesn't mean that you have to give up on life. Dark truth, like when you see a dark truth, you should like see it and be like, okay, then I have to overcome this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's generally more or less when I think of it. That's kind of how I think of things. But I mean, I think that applies past even like past sexual stuff. That can apply to like education or class or job, right? Like obviously some people start off pretty far behind in life, and you got a lot of catching up to do. And you'll never be a billionaire, but you know, you still work as hard as you can. You don't want to be fucked for your whole life.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, another thing that we talk about on the forum every once in a while is, I mean, there's also, there's the whole virgin thing. Like we talk about virgin, like how important virginity is, whether it be for men or females, right? Like, or the differences between like virginity and how promiscuity can affect the outcomes of a relationship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would say like that's a pretty big topic as well. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it seems to mostly just be like arguing about, honestly, it seems to mostly just be arguing about race stuff, you know, race, religion, and sex, as you would expect from most places, right?
Yeah, online, yeah.
It's just race, religion, and sex, but with men only, and a lot of shit posting, a lot of trolling. Sometimes it gets too far. Sometimes it gets way too far. But nothing really illegal has happened on the forum for a long time. I'm pretty sure. Maybe yeah. There have been some weird cases of some illegal stuff that has happened on the incel forum. For example, there was a guy who posted a video of him kidnapping someone, but that's a different story, I guess.
What do you this is a really intense question, I guess. Do you have like strong positions on like incel uprisings and shit and like mass shootings and stuff? Are there people that are like that doomerpilled in the forum that it's like it's time to take out the gat and
I mean, like there are people who talk about like rising up. There are people who talk about doing stuff in Minecraft, doing stuff on GTA Online, you know, the code words and stuff. But I mean, a lot of the time it's just like edgy jokes. Like there's most people are not actually doing anything. And like for example, when it comes to like if I was to like take this back to like Elliot Rodger and Alec Manassian, for example. Elliot Rodger never identified as an incel, first of all.
True.
And also he could have literally just drove anywhere else because he was in a predominantly like upper class white area that had in like California, where the sexual markets there were very not in his favor as a half Jewish, half Asian, Southeast Asian kid. So it's like he could have literally just drove somewhere else. So it's like, and look, that's not an excuse, but
I will say, to be fair, from watching his videos, I think that guy could have been like whiter than a fucking snowflake, and he still would have had problems probably getting girls. But
yeah. He did have he clearly had something going wrong with him. Also, I don't think he was that bad of a guy. I think honestly, dude, he's kind of a good-looking guy in my opinion. I'm not, I'm just saying, he's kind of a good-looking guy. But yeah, so he never identified as an incel. First of all, he was never on any major incel forums. He was never
was incel that big of a thing back then? I'm trying to remember how long ago the Elliot Rodger stuff was.
I think it was like when he happened, it was more of I think R9K was probably like bigger than any of the subreddits or anything like that. But any of the like incel subreddits, but I think they were around. to a degree. Now, Alec Manassian literally just LARPed, saying that he knew Elliot Rodger. He knew He like knew all these secrets. You know, he was talking to Elliot Rodger about the Beta uprising and all that kind of stuff. And you know, he has autism, to be fair, and he did identify as an incel, but he was not on any forums. He was not on any discords. He was not on any like, I never knew the guy, and I was pretty big on the forum at the time. So it's like, I never knew the guy. Where was he? I wasn't talking to him. Who? Who? Like, WHO Megalol? Who is this guy? Right? Like, I have no idea who the dude is at all. But yeah, and that happens a lot. Like, I literally have no idea who a lot of these quote unquote, like, for example, there was a dude in like, what was it, the UK recently? You know, the British dude who did something, and I think he had relations to the incels as well. And it's like, who is this guy? I find it kind of weird how there are these people who identify as incel, but they're not even on any forums. They're not on any subreddits. They're not on 4chan. And I'm not trying to say that it's fake, because it did happen. Those attacks did happen. I just don't know who they are. I've never heard of these people before. They're not in any community.
Sure.
They're not in any mainstream or not mainstream. But yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, I would say that I'll just make this very clear. Violence against innocent civilians is not acceptable, right? Like, it's like, if they've done nothing wrong, you should not be killing anyone. You should not be advocating for violence against just like random women, right? Or random men. Like, I mean, like, Elliot Rodger killed his roommate. Why? What did, like, even if you can justify it, that's saying, like, right? If you can justify it, why did he kill his roommate? What did his roommate have to do with him being, you know, not being able to get a blonde white girlfriend or whatever?
This forum is basically, it sounds like every edgy, like, unmoderated political forum, except it's got like a certain bend towards men's issues, but like all the big things probably get talked about, I'm guessing, like things related to race and whatnot. What's something, I guess, so representing the far left of this conversation, what do you think is something that like far left people get super wrong, that you think that they would do better to like understand something about? Yeah, like MRA stuff or incel stuff or anything like that.
Typically what they say is that, you know, you're an incel because you're not trying hard enough. You're an incel because you hate women. You're an incel because of all these kind of like all this nonsense, right? And the thing is, a lot of these people who are incels, a lot of them are like actively self-improving. A lot of them are actively trying to, you know, make money or improve their looks. And yeah, nobody believes that the personality, like your personality, has anything to do with it. Of course, yeah. Like on any incel forum or any Looksmax forum or anything like that, nobody believes that it has anything to do with your personality at all. And I don't believe it has anything to do with your personality as well. Now, say that one more time. Or what are you trying to say? It has nothing to do with your personality. Whether you get women does, or whether you're an incel does, or whether. Yeah. Like whether you are an incel or not, I don't believe it has anything to do with your personality. But what I would say in contrary to that is that there are people who have neurological disorders such as like autism or whatever, who unfortunately that can impact their ability to get a woman, right? Like if you have autism and you have trouble speaking to women because you're socially awkward or you can't actually, that is kind of like that kind of has to do with your personality, but like unless you have a neurological disorder, and that is preventing you from just, you know, getting someone or interacting with people, it has nothing to do with personality.
When you say, okay, yeah, so I'm curious. So when you guys talk about like self-improvement then, are you strictly talking about like a physical self-improvement?
Okay, so self-improvement is either improving your looks, improving your status, or improving your wealth, like your resources. And there are ways you can improve your status with some personality changes in the sense of, but it's not really like the same thing. It's more of like, for example, there are like, have you ever heard of thug maxing?
Nope, but hit me up. What is it?
Okay, so thug maxing is, well, okay, so basically it's if someone acts more, there are certain groups on the forum who talk about how, like, you know, particularly in more of the maybe like African American community, how like women don't like them if they're not like thug enough, right? If they aren't hard enough, if they act too white. There are people, or same thing with some ethnics as well, or some Asians will go down the thug maxing route where they will try to talk about being more thug, supposedly, and they talk about how there is an improvement to their ability to get women when they thug max. And a lot of stuff in the incel, by the way, a lot of stuff in the looks maxing or incel community has stuff like maxing, right? Like looks maxing.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of curious, not to have like a full-on argument or anything, but like, you don't think that, well, let's do two things first. Do you acknowledge, or do you believe that there are differences between like ease of access to sex versus ease of access to relationships? Or do you guys kind of all view that as like one and the same? If you can fuck somebody, you can date somebody.
Right. So, I mean, I guess ease of access to sex would be like, like prostitution, and like ease of access to relationship.
Oh, no. Like ease of access to sex might be literally, so like I would argue that for a lot of women on social media, there is ease of access to a lot of sex. Or when I say social media, I mean like dating, or I mean like dating apps. But there might not be ease of access into like high quality relationships. So like it's easy to find a guy to fuck, but can you find a guy that you like actually truly want to be dating? You know, like that might be a little bit more difficult, or that's necessarily more difficult. Whereas sometimes for men, they can have the feeling that it might be the opposite, or there might be similar difficulties. Or I'm just curious if there's like a distinction at all there, because I know that there's a lot of talk about like sexual marketplaces, but it's weird because, or this is kind of a weird thing for me. For a lot of the incel communities, it seems like there's a lot of emphasis placed on traditional values, but then a lot of the self-improvement and a lot of the kind of, I don't want to say obsession, but the fixation is around like access to sexual markets. And it's like, well, why would you care about access to sexual markets if you're so big on traditional values? Like, how does that work? Yeah.
Well, a sexual market can still be a traditional sexual market. It just means that people are only going to be going into that market specifically for long-term relationships, right? Like, so like if for example, in like maybe more of a rural Christian town in like the middle of nowhere, right? In like America, the sexual market is pretty much just going to be virgin men and virgin women pairing up with each other and having a fuck ton of sex throughout their relationship or whatever. That is, and like maybe they'll be more like bound by less market influences in less of a in a less traditional area, I guess. So like if we were to talk about like the differences between like ease of access to sex, what most people believe, well, what most people talk about in the forum and on like in these communities in general, is that areas where women are more promiscuous, and have more ease of access to sex, whether it be online or in apps or just in general. Maybe it's the job market, and because like there's a lot of grooming and manipulation in a lot of jobs as well, like where like there's a lot of women having sex and all that kind of stuff. But like and all that kind of stuff, whenever that is a thing, men typically have to work a lot harder to find a good relationship. And it's also a lot harder for them to find sex as well, unless you are a high value man in that area. So, I mean, yeah, I would say there is a difference, and there are people on the forum and there are people who are in these communities who also just want sex. That is true. But most people want love and a relationship, like a long-term relationship. And the reason why so many people are focused on traditionalism and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is because with that stuff in place, that means that finding a long-term relationship, particularly someone who is more of a equal value, maybe like looks-wise or mentally or whatever it may be, that will be a lot easier in a more traditional market, I suppose. Which is why a lot of people.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, like, this is why a lot of people. There's also a thing like this is a thing that I pushed a lot, which was called location maxing, And location maxing is where you just go somewhere else. And I know that sounds like, just move, right? But it's just moving is really hard. But you can go somewhere else, whether it be like a more conservative state, whether it be there are people who like C-Max, which is a Southeast Asia, people who try to take advantage of their being white with Asian women or whatever. There are people who go to Eastern Europe to try and find like more of a traditional Eastern European woman or whatever. And a lot of these people are just doing it for the intention of finding a long-term partner that they can spend the rest of their life with. And there's some people who've even talked about becoming Amish. There are people who are willing to give up all technology and try to convert to being Amish because it is easier to find a wife being Amish than it is in like maybe LA where everyone is promiscuous or something. But yeah, you had a question?
No, I'm just interested. I guess I'm listening. Going back and kind of thinking of the self-improvement or personality thing, and then kind of thinking of like women that incel look at, I feel like there's this kind of like weird reality where Tradcon people will look at women that are promiscuous and then kind of like be like, okay, well, look at how bad you are for sleeping around so much, fuck you. But then at the same time, they feel bad because they don't have access to those types of women. Like, if you are living in an area where you feel like all of the women are super promiscuous, why would it bother you if none of those women like wanted to hook up with you? Or am I missing something here? Because it seems like there's this weird world where you don't like a certain type of woman, but those women's judgments on you, not you in particular, but like you generally, those types of women's judgments on you still like play harshly against you. It's like, I don't like them, fuck them, but the fact that they don't like me still hurts, is kind of what I'm thinking, yeah.
Right. I think the main thing with a lot of people who are particularly of that mindset is not necessarily that they want a girl who is promiscuous to be interested in them. I think it's more like they wish that a promiscuous girl was as interested in a long-term relationship statistically as like, or they were able to capably have one and be interested in the same way as a girl who was maybe like a virgin, for example. Does that make sense? Because like in the right wing Tradcon sphere of things, there are like these statistics that are thrown around a lot, which I don't know if you've ever seen any of these studies, but like they're thrown around a lot. And like what these studies are is pretty much like, I think they're like a family studies thing.
My guess is going to be that like the more sexual partners you have, the less likely a relationship is to last or something like that, right?
Yeah, like, women are a lot more likely to initiate divorce. The amount of sex that is happening in a relationship is a lot less the more partner, like, higher the partner count, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, these things can be countered if you have like a lot of status and money. For example, like there, if you do have a lot of status, a lot of fame, a lot of money, you can still kind of like counter all that stuff with the high body counts. But that's not really love. A lot of people would argue at that point. It doesn't really count. Yeah, so like a lot of people, like they want women, like a lot of the Tradcons, for example, they want women to just be as invested in a long-term relationship as they are. Because you have to think about this for a second. Women initiate most divorces. They really do. I mean, if you look at the statistics, they initiate pretty much every divorce. And the higher the body count, the more they initiate divorce.
So here's like, this would be the obvious counter argument. I don't know how you'd respond. Like, what if some people would say that like the reason why they initiate divorce is because they have a little bit more autonomy and they realize that they're stuck in relationships that they don't want to be in? Could that be a possibility?
That could be a possibility, but what people would argue in relation to that is that, so we would say that evolutionarily, there's like two modes. There's two modes that women have a lot of the time. And it's kind of like being able to pair bond with one partner in more of a traditional, like normal, healthy relationship, or in more of a wartime scenario, like where things are getting like really out of hand, like and like women are constantly getting. There's a lot of partners going around with women because men are dying in war all the time. So their minds are in like more of a breed with as many men as possible, make warriors, that kind of mindset. So it's kind of like domesticated mode versus make a warrior for melee combat mode, I guess, if that makes sense. But I know that might sound kind of silly, but that's kind of like what a lot of these statistics seem to imply.
So the fact that you have, with the fact, let's say that is even a mode that like exists, would it be enough just having multiple partners? Would that be enough to bring that mode out?
Yeah. It seems so. I mean, because, well, if you look at the divorce, for example, if you look at like just a woman who has had one partner, now don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure like if you look at the divorce rates of a woman who has had one partner, it is just about as equal to a man who has had 7 partners of the rates of initiating the divorce. So, and there's a lot of reasons for this. For example, there's also, have you heard of, now this is a very controversial study. Are you familiar with the study relating to like women being able to absorb the DNA of men that they sleep with and when they ejaculate inside of them or whatever?
Never heard that before. I don't know what this means, but yeah, tell me what you're talking about.
I know that probably sounds really just wild and wacky.
Yeah, hit me up.
So there is a basically there's this concept that's like, it's called telogyny. I believe it's called. Maybe I'm wrong. And there was like, I think it was a study done in Spain, maybe. Basically, like when a man ejaculates inside of a woman, she seems to like absorb the DNA. And for example, this is mostly, people will say, basically the TLDR of this is that women absorb the DNA of men that they sleep with if they've ejaculated inside of them, and it can alter their, that DNA can pass on to even children that they have with other men.
Is there like,
does that make sense? And it can also alter their mind to a degree. Like it can alter, because they only have all this DNA in there.
I feel like there would need to be some like biomechanical underpinning for this. Like I don't know how DNA seeps into a person's DNA or whatever, but yeah, what?
I know. It's I'm not really sure what the. I'm gonna be honest. I've heard about that study a lot. Mm-hmm. The validity of it might be a little. I would mostly focus on like when I would argue personally is we can look at the family studies. We can look at the divorce rates. We can look at the rates of happiness, the rates of divorce, the rates. I said that twice. My bad. We can look at the long-term reports in a relationship of people of various body counts, and we can kind of like see that there is something going on that is bad happening here. And I know correlation does not always equal causation, but in this specific category, when people have a lot of partners, particularly women, it does seem to indicate problems for a long-term relationship.
What do you think are the chances that I'm sorry, I'm reading articles about this sperm study. Apparently there's been a lot of pushback on it, but I don't.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Sorry. Okay. So.
And there's a lot more that you can do to explain a lot of those symptoms.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. Is that like that like the idea that it was sperm was like one, like apparently you can find some male DNA in some women's brains, but the idea that it was like sperm from sexual partners is like, that's just like, yeah, but okay.
Yeah, that's one example.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, moving past that, okay, because that's not that important. So what do you think are the chances that like the types of relationships that we have in society and the way that we structure these relationships, maybe that's like just something that's changing, and that's just like a thing that's going to happen, and there is no pushing back against that? Do you think it wouldn't be better to like, I don't want to say like adapt with the times, but to like kind of figure out like, well, how do these things work today? And maybe it's best to figure that out and navigate through that environment rather than like yearning for the days of old, if we're kind of like moving past that in another direction.
Right. I would actually argue that we are not moving like in a new direction. I would argue that we are moving in more of a very old direction, in like a very, very, very old direction. Because if you look at like I would call it more of like a domestic relationship in like maybe 100 years ago, maybe like 60, 70, 80 years ago, in more of like the civilized Western world, humans were kind of like domesticating themselves. Does that make sense? Like with how they formed families. But if you go back thousands of years, and you go back to like maybe like when we were like Vikings, and we were like raping and pillaging people, and we were doing like all kinds of just, really dumb things to each other. The way that relationships seem to be structured and the way that like social dynamics are happening now seems to be far more similar and almost identical to the most primitive times in our past than the more recent traditional times in our present-ish. Does that make sense?
Isn't that kind of only true though if we're only looking at like one or two different things? So for instance, like just number of sexual partners. I feel like the way that our lives are today are pretty far removed from like the ways of the past, such that even if there are some things that are similar, like the way that we select for sexual partners or status or whatever, like other things have changed as well.
I mean, other things have changed as well, but we're primarily concerned about like sexual dynamics and sexual markets and sexual culture, right? And like what caused it back then, and what is causing it today. And what seemed to be causing it back then was, for example, people would go in, Vikings would go in, they would go in and they would kill all the men, and they would take all the women as slaves. They would rape or there would be like a king, and they would have access to a lot of the women. There would be these just really weird, warped sexual dynamics, or there would be like women who were not getting married, women who were not pair bonding with one guy in their village or their town or whatever. And it's just, even if it's not happening through rape or murder nowadays, like there isn't someone going into like a church and just like bonking all the dudes on the head with a stone club and being like, all the church women here are now mine. That doesn't happen. But like the thing is, there are ways that it is happening without that. Like, for example, there's a lot of people who abuse their status and power in like maybe like the job markets, right? There's a lot of people who will hire women, or they will get women just for the purpose of sex, and like they will use their status and power that they have just for sex. And that can cause long-term problems when they weren't not invested in a relationship. That will fuck up the woman because they basically just like abused her in a way, I would say, by manipulating her for sex. And another thing that they can do is that you have these power dynamics that are happening nowadays, whether it be with ease of access to sex online, whether it be like dating apps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people can say it's consensual, but you got to think as well, like guys will say anything to have sex. And when you have power, like when you have like a lot more status in like a job, let's say you're the manager of a job, and then you have no interest in like dating someone at like a lower level of that, like a lower level hire, and you only hired them for sex, that's pretty bad. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think I even saw someone in the chat defending that to a degree. It's like it's consensual. It's like that's pretty fucked up. But and it's kind of funny because people will say that what I'm saying is almost something that like a feminist would say, but it's like traditionalists believe kind of like the same thing, that women are getting manipulated, women are being used for sex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all pretty bad. And there's all these things that are like causing the same thing, where a woman may be like have a lot of partners because she was raped by Vikings, versus women may have a lot of partners now because there's a lot of manipulation going on. Women are manipulated far more.
Sure, but I mean, like, so there are definitely areas that we can point to, like, where women might be manipulated, right? I guess, like, the hard thing is, like, teasing out, like, so one of the things that I fight against the most when I talk on stream is everybody, when they have like a particular lens that they view the world through, they try to find ways to shove like every problem into that like worldview. So this is like a big criticism I have of like socialists, or sometimes when I argue against like incels or MRAs, that every problem they try to like kind of like push through this particular lens. So I guess like a question I have is, there's like so many different places to go. Like we can argue that there are some cases where an abuse of power happens. But then conversely, can we also say that women given like greater access to reproductive freedom and like the ability to freely choose would just like enjoy to have like a few sexual relationships possibly before settling down with like some long-term partner? Like, can't that happen without there being any like coercion or anything crazy like that?
I would say like an inclination towards promiscuity, like an inclination to have like a sexual relationship just for fun, isn't really something that a typical virgin has, like a virgin woman has the inclination to do. Like if we look at like when we look at a lot of relationships, and how they start with like there's like the concept in like the incel community called, or the manosphere called, just be first. Does that make and it's like if you are the first one in a relationship, you can kind of like the relationship will last a lot longer. Women don't really seem to like, and people can cope and say whatever, but like women don't really seem to have an inclination to just be interested in sex until after their first partner. Does that make sense? Like a lot of the time. And I'm not saying there are not statistical like anecdotes that prove otherwise. I mean, because there are like anomalies, but like pretty much every single time, anyone who is interested in sex for just fun, and it's typically, there is like a breeding purpose for that as well, because a lot of the mate selection is more of like the higher teal, physically attractive man or a high status man as well. So it's always mate selection as well.
I mean, there are a lot of women that are like, even if they're not sexually active at an early age, like they're still like they start masturbating and shit as well, though. No, or do you view this as like fundamentally separate? Or
no, you're right. They do, but it's still not. It's not really the same thing. Yeah.
Damn. Do you think all else equal? Let's say you took two people and you equalized them. Would the one with the better personality win out in terms of like mate selection, or is it truly flipping a coin at that point? It doesn't matter.
If personality matters when it comes to maintaining a relationship, it doesn't matter when it comes to like entering a relationship. So like I would say like he would like if they were both equal, the one with the personality would win. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Fuck. I mean, like, there's a lot I would argue with, but I mean, we'd have to start like digging through studies and stuff. Do you ever worry that like? I didn't. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, we're not like prepared to have that kind of conversation.
Yeah. Like,
do you ever worry sometimes that like there might be like a view of the world you have, and if it doesn't map onto reality well enough, that you're kind of like doomer-pilling the fuck out of yourself for no reason? Is that ever something you are like concerned about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like when I was younger, particularly like when I was like 18, I was very like nihilistic, very like, I'm not gonna lie, like when I was 18, I hated women. But to be fair, when I was 18, I was also like far more obese. I had a lot more bad things going on in my life. I didn't really have a lot going on for me when I was 18. And when things just kept going bad for me as they were, I kind of just, I developed a very like bad mindset. And when I got older, and I was able to like speak to women outside of LA in particularly, because I'm not gonna lie, women in LA haven't really improved that much. Maybe they've even gotten worse. But like when I was able to like travel the world a little bit, when I was able to like talk to women like outside of LA, when I was able to get like more of a perspective on like the world as a whole, when I was able to like talk to people of different like, you know, races, cultures, and just all kinds of stuff in general, it really does like put things into perspective, because not all women are the same, right? Like not like there are statistical anomalies. There are women out there who are extremely just like fun to talk to. There are women who make great books. There are women who make great like movies and shows and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that people think that incels or people in the manosphere hate women. People will make very edgy jokes, but most people don't actually hate women. And the people who genuinely do, the reason why they do hate women or like a specific race or whatever it may be, is because that's all they are typically that's all they see in their local environment. They haven't really been out of their trapped environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, your exposure to something is like very combative and aggressive, and the engagement is bad, so you develop kind of like a skewed perception of like how bad it actually is or something, right?
Yeah, it's like if I stayed in LA, if I never like talked to any women at all, if I just like, if I was the way that I was back then and I stayed that way, I would probably be a very, very different toxic person. I may have committed suicide by now, honestly, if I'm quite honest. There's just like, that's just like a big misconception, I would say, like a lot of people have. Like most incels and most people in the manosphere, even though like I'm not an incel anymore, I've had relationships or whatever, blah 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 blah. A lot of people who like look smacks, a lot of people who have had sexual encounters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who are in this community, it does not mean that they hate women. They may have very extreme views, but most of these extreme views are just traditional conservative views. At the end of the day, typically it's just like extreme. Well, it's more of just like really hardcore Tradcon views. But of course, again, there are many people who are just in it for slaying. Now that's a term that means like, you know, having as much sex as possible, you know, becoming Chad and slaying as many females as possible. But most people are not like that. Most people are absolutely not like that.
Gotcha. What would you, if you were thinking about like, so if you look at like the amount of relationships women are in, if you look at like the way that men associate with relationships based on if, you know, the partner's about sex or not, like all these different kind of things that you're pretty set on, what would be an example of types of like data or stories or like examples that would kind of make you rethink like, okay, well, hold on, maybe this particular thing is a lot different than I thought, or maybe this isn't exactly the way that I thought it was?
Well, for example, if there was evidence that the counter to just being the amount of sexual partners, like if there was like a study that was done that really produced some data that seemed to indicate that the reason why women seem to be actively unstable in a relationship when the amount of partners goes up had something, it wasn't what it seemed, if that makes sense. Like if it wasn't what it seemed from that data, then I would probably reconsider a lot of my worldview in terms of like traditionalism, I suppose. But
so like I'm not
really...
yeah, I'm not trying to ambush you because I truly don't know. I haven't looked at it in quite a while. But like, so if it was the case, for instance, that like, so here I'm kind of curious because we're looking at things from the male side. So what if there was like accurate data that showed that like women that are more sexually promiscuous are more likely to initiate divorce. However, women that are more sexually promiscuous, even if they've been divorced, like in whatever relationship they are, they rate that they're higher on happiness scales than women that otherwise wouldn't divorce. So maybe, yeah, they're more choosy about their relationships, but they end up being happier in their relationships. Would that be like an acceptable outcome, or would it be too one-sided favoring the women there? In terms of how
that would be a pretty acceptable outcome if it turned out that, you know, women who were in like a bad relationship, for example, and maybe it turns out like a lot of these women were in a bad relationship, and then as it turns out, women who were in a bad relationship, maybe in their next relationship, they actually seem to enjoy that relationship more, or it lasts a lot longer. That would be pretty acceptable. I don't think it's likely, but that would be an acceptable outcome. Now, there is another thing that you also have to consider in a lot of these spheres, though, like a lot of the Tradcon spheres or the incel sphere or the manosphere, whatever. A lot of people are also really concerned with having children, right? Like especially as men. And in this sphere, when it comes to like having children, like having a healthy environment for the child, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This don't take this the wrong way, but like, you know, this has a lot to do with a healthy age to have the child with a female. And a lot of the time, especially in these communities, it's actively pushed that having a child is the most healthy with a female between the ages of like 18 to 23, right? So it's like when you get to like a certain, like, you know, if someone's been divorced, the odds that they are like past, what do they call it, post-wall? But like, you know, when they get like to a certain point, it's just kind of like you don't really want to have a family with them anymore. And not because you can't like love them. Because for example, I'm not gonna lie, bro. Hey, look, I would love a 40-year-old mommy GF. That is ideal, bro. But that's not ideal for having kids. So it's just kind of like, since I want to have kids, and there's many other people who want to have kids, you know, we want to have healthy kids.
Sure.
We want to have them, you know, when they're healthy.
I understand. Just to be clear, my understanding is that like basically you're clear. I'm pretty sure you're clear up until you're 35, but where stuff starts getting bad. I'm pretty sure like a 30-year-old woman more or less has like decent chance of having a kid compared to like a 25-year-old or like 20-year-old. Although once you get,
I mean, like,
what? Go ahead.
There are, I mean, they're like healthier compared to like a 40 or 45-year-old, sure, but it's like when you compare like a 30 to 35-year-old compared to like an 18 to 24-year-old, for example, there are still more complications. And yeah, maybe the statistics may be like relatively negligible, but it's still like enough where like a lot of people don't want to risk it, because there are like increased likelihoods of like autism. There are increased likelihoods of,
yeah, but again, these are like really, I find it really hard to believe that somebody like finds somebody, clicks with somebody really well when they're 30, but then they're like, oh fuck, like this relationship is perfect, but there's like a 2% higher chance that our kid might be born with autism,
Sure.
so now we have to break up and I need to find a 22-year-old or something.
Sure. I mean, well, this isn't about like look, if you connect with somebody and you love them, then fucking go for it, dude. That's base. You know, like love is, if you genuinely love someone and you want to go for it, then go for it. I'm talking about like if you're trying to enter a relationship, like, you know, you're talking about like a partner selection.
Are you kind of, so here's something kind of from the sex point of view. So in my opinion, I think sexual compatibility is a very, very, very important part of a relationship. Are you not worried that being with like a virgin or being with somebody with very, very limited sexual experience, like what if you try to get into a relationship like that and you're just not sexually compatible at all? Like how does that work?
So according to like what the data that I'm aware of is that virgins seem to be far more sexually open in the long term, and especially like as they learn a lot, they seem to be far more open and active in the long term than people who, you know, are not. So maybe in like the short term, they may not be like sexually compatible with you immediately, but like over time, it does seem to develop a lot more than like you get into a relationship with someone. They're like, oh, honey, oh, sweaty. I don't do blowies or whatever. It's like, I did that with my last boyfriend and I didn't like it, so I don't want to do that with you. That shit does not happen really with
you don't think there are virgins that like don't, well, I mean like firstly, I mean technically everybody was a virgin at some point, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like with way limited sexual experience, like it seems like you run a higher risk of partnering with somebody that you are completely sexually incompatible, and you would just have no idea. You know, the relationship could start. They might, you know, not everybody just because they're a virgin is going to be open to every single thing, and it seems like you could get fucked there. Like if I was going to date a new girl right now and she was like fucking 18 and she was like a virgin, it's like, okay, well, like it just seems like starting from that point, especially if you're older as a guy, like I don't know, like like that type of selection just seems like it would be like really bad. Or if you've got, or if neither of you have experience, right? If you're both like 25 and you go to date, like you might not even know like what good sex is or like what a good experience is, because there's a lot of people that are in a relationship for a long time, for their first relationship, like 3, 4, 5 years, and then they break up and they're with somebody else and like, oh my god, I didn't even know I could have an orgasm with a partner. Oh my god, I didn't, right? Like that kind of stuff could happen too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, I would say, so like, you know, obviously, when we are more sexually experienced, we know what we like a lot more than we are not sexually experienced. That's just true. I'm sure you know that. I know that. It's just kind of like, that's just true. But the thing is, when we find a girl who is not sexually experienced, they may not be interested in the same things. Like I don't really know what your fetishes are, dude. I don't know if I want to know. But like the thing is, it's like, sure, we may have like ideal things that we want to do in bed that
Well,
maybe
to be clear, I'm not necessarily saying like crazy, like, you know, like, God, like I really want like a diaper mommy or something. I'm not saying something like that. But like, let's say that, for instance, it might be like a case of like ultra mismatched libido, that a girl like gets into a relationship with somebody and she's like, you know, I want to have sex every single day. And the guy's like, okay, well, I'm more like a once a week kind of person. And if you didn't know that before you got into a relationship, you're like, now you're fucked, right? Or you're not fucked, I guess, right?
Right. That's a good point. You know, like, you know, a dead bedroom, right? That's a problem. With you know, but dead bedrooms only seem to happen statistically, you know, when the partner count is higher, when the initial partner count is higher at the initiation of a relationship. When we, again, like, I'm not trying to, you know, this isn't a debate or anything, but like the studies that I'm familiar with, active sex lives are far more common among virgins than non-virgins. And, you know, people can make the argument, well, maybe it's because like she doesn't know and this is all that she has or whatever. But it's like, there's a lot of potential reasons, but it's still, libido-wise, like, for example, are you familiar with the concept of like, I mean, this is a very strange conversation, but like, you know how like orgasms can get worse, like with, or like how, the more stuff you do or the more extreme stuff you do, et cetera, like it becomes harder to have like an orgasm for many people. You know what I mean?
I've never had this problem, but I've heard people say this. Not that it's harder to have an orgasm, but that like, especially when it comes to searching porn, they have to find more and more extreme stuff. That sounds really weird to me, but apparently there are people that have that, sure. So I guess it must.
Right. And there are many people like who suffer from, you know, erectile dysfunction or whatever. Like the same thing can happen to, it's not just a male only issue. Women can have sexual problems as well, where they have to do more, like this goes both ways. Men and women can, you know, get into more extreme things relatively. I'm not talking about like, you know, super extreme stuff, but I'm just talking about how like the more stuff you do, the more experience you have, the harder it can become for you to be sexually satisfied. Now that doesn't mean that you won't get to that level, but for some people that level may already be inevitable. You know, like that level, like of constantly having sex and then
I understand what you're saying. I guess
over time.
Yeah, I get that. That's that. We'd have to like dig through data for that, I guess, just because that's a harder one. Because it seems unlikely to me, but I mean, I guess it could happen to some people. It's possible, but yeah.
Yeah. For example, like, you know, a vibrator can really desensitize females, right?
A vibrator can desensitize men, but I mean, like, if you stop using them, like, that goes away after like a week. It's not like you desensitize yourself, your like nerves are destroyed forever or whatever.
That's true. Like, you can kind of like cleanse yourself by like detoxing yourself from like the that thrill for a while. Like there are people who say, like, you know, if you're having a problem with your sex life in a relationship, how about you guys just like stop masturbating and stop having sex for like a couple weeks and don't use any like sex toys or whatever like that, and then it'll be, you know, there'll be like a much more of a rush when it actually happens, and that rush can continue for the rest of the relationship, hypothetically, if you keep going down that road.
The way that I view all of it is so much different, obviously, but
right.
It's really hard for. This is one of those things that's really hard to get data on, because like for immigration and economics, like all of that stuff is so easily quantifiable in numbers. When it comes down to like happiness and personal satisfaction, those things are really hard as well. Like I remember that, so for instance, you've repeated something a couple times. I don't know if married people have more sex, like that are married for long periods of time, but I feel like I've read that the satisfaction is rated as higher. I think that's something that I've read pretty consistently. But I kind of wonder if like how satisfied does a person know, for instance, if they've only been in like one relationship? Now, I mean, that could be biased. Maybe that's a good thing. It's really hard to gather data on that. I had my first girlfriend. We were more or less virgins when we first started dating. I think we were 16 or 17. And I would have assumed that like, oh yeah, like this feels as good as obviously sex could feel because it is what it is. But then after having like more partners later, there's like things like, okay, well this is way better or this is way better. So if you were to ask me to rate like what was the sexual satisfaction of my first relationship, I'd be like, okay, you know, it was pretty high, but not like as high as it could have been. But if you would have asked me back then in that relationship, I would have been like, oh, like it's perfect. It's like a 9 or a 10, you know? So I kind of wonder, yeah, I don't know. I wonder on stuff like that sometimes. It's so hard to find information about it, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as well, like, for example, I saw someone mention that, maybe it's maybe the reason why they're staying in a marriage is because like it's a cultural thing. But even in like the 70s or 80s, the divorce rates were pretty much identical when the partner, like to now, when the partner count is increased. And even if you go to all the way like to the 2020 or the more recent, I don't think it went all the way to 2020s, but like whenever like the last decade of the study was conducted, which was in more modern times, virgins, like people who have entered a relationship as a virgin still have like lower divorce rates. But yeah, look, when it comes to like, your sexual satisfaction with like your partner in the past and you like are unaware, you're ignorant to it or whatever. And like that study in particularly as well, or like at least that I'm remembering in my mind, is that sexual activity is higher as well. From what I remember, it's sexual activity and sexual satisfaction are both higher. But yeah, look, I know this isn't really a debate. I mean, no, we're not really trying to like, get one on over each other.
No, yeah, no. Most of the stats you bring up, most people don't like them, but I'm pretty sure generally most of them are true. Because I looked at this a lot in the past. Like 4 years ago, I used to argue incel stuff more, and the satisfaction with relationships with increased partners and everything. Like these are all like pretty real documented things. The satisfaction does decline, or other issues that come up. This is pretty well documented. But I know that people argue the causality for a lot of it is really hard, or is it good or bad? Like, are women leading divorces? Is that a bad thing, or maybe that's a good thing? It's really hard to like get into the nitty gritty of that, of like what's positive or negative, which is But
I mean, well, I don't. Do you really think that like a divorce is a good thing? And I mean, you're divorced, right? I mean, like overall.
I would say that like it depends, right? So here's like something that I can think of, right? So like. You have cases where men and women are together and the husband cheats on the wife, okay? And in a modern relationship, the wife might be like, okay, well, you cheated on me. I can't really trust you anymore. Like, this is fucked. Like, we're going to break up. And then the wife initiates a divorce. But in a more traditional marriage, the wife might be like, hey, actually, fuck, like, especially if you're Catholic, if I get a divorce, I have to get like, it's not an annulment. It's going to look really bad in my community. My whole family is going to fucking hate me. It's going to fuck everything up. Like, okay, fuck it. Let's just stay together and try to make it work or whatever. So like in that situation, I say like, okay, well, this is a case where they had fewer sexual relationships. They got together, they're married, and they're married for longer, and the woman doesn't initiate a divorce, but she probably should have, or maybe it would have been better if she did. So like in examples like that, it's like, well, I don't know if them not getting divorced is like better for both parties there than if they would have. Because there's so much outside social pressure that's forcing that relationship to stay together, even if those two people don't necessarily want it. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking of in terms of like maybe it's not always good if they stay together, Right. Okay. Like in that case, I would say this: if a partner cheats, like if a husband or a wife cheats in a relationship, I don't think that they should stay together. I think that is cause for divorce. That is a brutal scenario because like that is a betrayal of trust. Because like cheating is like something you don't want to happen. Yeah, of
right?
course. Yeah.
That is fucked. That should not happen. But for like more maybe like petty things, like let's say you have a child together, okay? I think like as adults, if you've made the decision to have children together, you should try to, because it is more of a healthy environment for a child when like both parents are active in that child's life. Like, especially when it's both biological parents. And when the parents are separated, and especially like there's a lot of data suggesting that especially for like little girls, when like the father is not around, you can cause a lot of damage to her mentally because like they're very reliant on like a father figure in their life.
Yeah, but you have to weigh those. It's such a hard thing to weigh because like it's better to have separated parents that are cordial towards each other, and even though it sucks, you've got to visit one another, versus parents that stay together and then like fucking hate each other, and then you live like in a horrible shit household,
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out, but it's hard to know why you are, whether you should break up or shouldn't. That's a really difficult question to answer sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, like relationships, especially if you're there's a kid involved, but you hate each other. It makes things complicated. It makes things almost impossible in some cases, especially with the way like social dynamics work nowadays. But like, we want to like figure out a way, or at least I think we should as a society. We should figure out a way. If we have children together, at least for like future relationships, we should try to figure out a way that like if something goes wrong, we can figure out a way for like both parents to be active and want to be active, because that is going to lead to the most optimal outcome for the child. No?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what's happened, if that's possible, right? That's a really hard thing to That's a hard thing to do, you know.
Right.
Yeah, like in case of cheating, this might be unpopular. I don't, not to sound shitty or whatever, but like, I like in cases of cheating, I think that those relationships are 95% of the time they're irreparable. Because both people end up being miserable if the relationship continues. The person that cheated is going to feel like they never have any freedom again because the person that was cheated on is always going to have like a lack of trust, and those things are just like fucked. Yeah.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, that's why like even like when I was at my lowest with my ex or whatever, when I found out like that she cheated, I knew that like even if I had like a part of me that wanted her back, even if she came back to me, I would not. Like even if she like showed up at my door, this was an IRL thing, I would not ever fucking get back with her because like the way that she fucked me over in a relationship was just like it hurt more than anything I've ever felt, right? But yeah, I don't really know what else to talk about. I mean, I know there's probably like so many things that we can.
Yeah, maybe in the future
about.
we'll have like we can have like a debate maybe on some of the stats on happiness or whether promiscuity is better than virginity, and then we could rank it on some axes or dimensions. Yeah.
Yo, dude, XQC is Bay Zed. I fucking love XQC, bro. I know you're not XQC, but I'm just letting that out there. I'm a juicer, bro. Not gonna lie.
Okay. Gotcha. Oh wait, would you ever want to talk to a guy? Do you know who John Zerka is on this platform?
John Zerka?
No. Okay. I'm gonna connect you.
I've heard of him.
You guys should have a conversation at some point. I think that would be really interesting. Okay. It would be 9 out of 10 content. All right. Okay, yeah, well, hey, if you have any other things, you can always like hit me up. I'll probably like poke you in the future if my editor gets mad at me and wanted me to talk about something else. So.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, no, it was a good conversation. If you want to have a debate, like, I mean, that might take like a bit of preparation, of course, like probably on both of our parts, because there's like, also like, have you noticed nowadays it's like so hard to find data compared to like back in like 2014, 2015? Like, it's so hard to find data on anything nowadays. Is that just me, or is like, I swear, like when you like Google anything, it's just like,
I mean, it depends on what you're looking for, and like especially when we get into sociology, there are so many subjective things that it's hard to figure out like what is even there's a question of what is good, and that makes it really hard to find data on, I think, on like relationships. So like even when we look at like what is like a happiness index, you know, like what makes somebody happier versus unhappier, you know, like an athlete that that's, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. There's like a million things. Like, for instance, my life today, I have like a million more stresses today and a million more things I have to go to than when I was like a working class carpet cleaner. There's a million things. This job is way harder. There's a million things that I've got to focus on. So like I could see somebody in my position. There's a lot of streamers that rank themselves as like, oh, I'm really unhappy, blah, 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 blah. However, I would never, ever, 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 ever give this up to go back to like a simpler life of like being working class and fucked. Because why the fuck would you do that, right? But there are a lot of people that in the streaming world, in the YouTube world, who like they get into these careers like literally out of fucking high school, and they think that like, yeah, I think my life is like, in a lot of ways, my life is worse than like a working class person. It's like, okay, well, why don't you quit YouTube and go work at McDonald's then and see if it really is worse, right? But they'd still rate themselves as like, yeah, I'm miserable and depressed and like super sad all the time, like doing this shit, and it's like, okay, yeah. So getting data on stuff like that, it's really hard to figure out on a lot of those subjective qualities, like, are women happier? Are people in relationships happier? You know, why aren't people in relationships anymore? Or why is it harder for people? It's so hard to figure out like what the answers to those questions are. And then when you find the answers, sometimes it's hard to figure out like, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? So for instance, like one of the things is like we don't find relationships through friends as much anymore. That's one of the biggest ways that decreased in terms of how you'd meet dating partners. You used to meet them through friends, and that's gone like way down, you know? And is that just because people move out of college to other cities? Is it because we don't go to church? Is it because people aren't like as like in real life friend oriented versus like talking in rooms all the time, like Discord rooms? I don't, it's all like so complicated and difficult to answer. There's so much changing in the world, you know?
Right. I mean, like, the thing is as well, I mean, as a species, like, when you look at, like, how we did find partners in the past, a lot of the time we were just, like, in a small, very local town. We would like, you know, find a partner through, you know, through church, through our, through, like, one of the neighbors. Like, we're, like, so much more distanced as a species, but we're also closer as this in the same factor because of the internet, because of ways that we can interact with each other, and that makes relationships so much more complicated. Because like all of this stuff is very recent, like the way that we like the way that all the dynamics have changed. It's way too recent for, I would say, like our species to be beneficial, personally. But but yeah, when it comes to like a lot of these studies as well, I mean, dude, I was trying to find like, because I remember referencing like a couple studies from like the like a neurological research laboratory in like Copenhagen, and like something from like Spain and Florida or whatever, relating to like it was like had to do with like the neocortical neuron differences in the brain, and they also like wrote like their little like summary of why the differences between men and women were like negligible because of that. But I feel like they were just saying that because that was like the optical thing to do, because when you like really looked at all of those studies in succession, the neocortical neurons really do impact a lot of things when it comes to behavior and decision making.
Maybe.
But that's a different discussion. But yeah, like I couldn't even find that anymore. I mean, I could probably try, but like finding just like very data-driven studies and interpreting it for yourself, it's just kind of I feel like a lot of that stuff is like really hard to do. It used to be really easy to just find like all kinds of studies, and whether it be on DNA, whether it be on like neurological studies, whether it be all kinds of stuff. I can't really find that stuff as easily anymore, and I usually have to rely on like the forums, or I have to rely on very out there methods of research, which I used to just be able to like Google or go on like a lot of these websites themselves, like a lot of these research institutes or university websites, and you can't even do that anymore.
Well,
at least not easily.
I mean, hey, there's always Google Scholar. But
you can contact me at brendiocontact@gmail.com, or I mean, I guess I have like my Discord as well, which is like it's public. It's you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is Brendio EE.
thanks for the combo. I'll talk to you later. Just a reminder, anytime you type in Destiny, you gotta push back on Dashboard, I fucking ban you, okay? Most of the research that exists that I've seen about like multiple partners and people that lose their virginity early, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, most of the research that I've seen on that is like overwhelmingly negative. So I know that a lot of you guys in chat like to view, especially, okay, I said this a million times, I am a very atypical person, okay? Don't do the things that I do, okay? And don't think that the way that I am is the way that a normal person is, okay? I am a very atypical person, all right? So don't look, so like somebody in chat was like, Destiny, you should argue about poly and open relationships. My advice on poly and open relationships is, one, anybody that tells you they're okay with poly and open relationships is lying, okay? 99% of the time, because they're not. They're either looking for one person to settle down with, or they're gonna get jealous as fuck in a relationship. That happens 90% of the time. And two, most of you that try them are gonna hate yourselves, and you're not built for it. You're not built for it. Don't do it, okay? Monogamy and feeling like jealous if your partner is flirting with someone else or fucking somebody else, that is an incredibly normal human experience, okay? Don't model your life off of my life, and don't try to model like your view of the world off of how I live. Okay, I'm reiterating that. I know that like a lot of you guys, like as cringy as it is for me to say and imply it, I know there's a little bit of hero worship that goes on, or a lot of you guys are like, oh, Destiny does this thing, like everyone can do this thing, I can do this thing, like, oh my god, like, oh yeah, so Destiny is like a poly bisexual guy, like, oh yeah, like that's totally everybody could do, like, that's not true, okay? Destiny played StarCraft 16 hours a day, but I want to do, like, no, don't do that, okay? I'm happy with my life. I love my life. I'm not like you, okay? I'm not depressed all the time, okay? I don't get jealous of people, okay? I'm very atypical. I'm sorry. I have to reiterate this a million times because I get worried, especially when I see other people in my community and I see people that I know that are like, oh yeah, like I'm trying the polyamory thing. How the fuck did I suddenly get like 15 polyamorous friends? What the fuck? No fucking way are you guys okay with it. I don't believe you. Just be careful, okay? Be careful. Backing off of all of that, I'm sorry. Returning to the original topic, okay? Returning to the original topic. Yeah, a lot of the data on like the super promiscuous relationships and all that doesn't really play out as positively as you'd like to think. There isn't a study out there that shows like, oh my God, people that have 10 plus sexual partners are way more satisfied in relationships. That data doesn't exist as far as I'm aware. Now, the intelligent thing to do is to ask like, hey, why is that the case? You know, is it that people that are more promiscuous also tend to be like younger or in more like modern lifestyles, and it's actually the modern lifestyle that's pissing them off? Like maybe the people that are promiscuous are more likely to spend more time online or on social media, and that's what makes them miserable. Like that could be the case, but yeah, you can't come out swinging with facts that don't support what you're saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Ah, Jesus. All right.